Okay, so welcome to another deep dive. You know the drill. I'm Jack.
Sarah's here too. Hey, everyone.
And today we're going to be doing things a little differently. You know, we're usually digging through research papers, scientific journals, that kind of thing.
Yeah, dense academic stuff, right? Lots of footnotes.
Exactly. But this time we're going right to the source.
Primary source material.
Yeah, the first-hand account.
From one of our listeners, actually.
Yep, Bob Miller sent us this story.
Or Robert Miller, I think it says, but he seems to prefer Bob.
Yeah, Bob it is. And the title of his story, well, let's just say it doesn't exactly inspire warm, fuzzy feelings about RV camping.
I'll never go RV camping in Indiana again.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right off the bat, you know, this is going to be a wild ride.
It grabs your attention, doesn't it? I mean, that title alone makes you want to know what happened to poor Bob.
Yeah, like what could possibly be so bad that you'd swear off an entire state for RV camping?
Exactly. And there's something about personal narratives like this that just hits differently.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, you're not just reading dry facts and figures. You're right there with the person experiencing it all, their fear, their confusion.
You feel that immediacy, that rawness.
Exactly. And in a case like this, where we're dealing with something that, well, defies easy explanation, that firsthand perspective is even more valuable.
Totally. So let's get into it. Bob Miller, retired photojournalist looking for a new chapter in life.
Classic story, right? Finds himself at a crossroads, wife passes away, kids move out looking for purpose.
Yep. And what better way to find it than hitting the open road, right?
Freedom of the open road, seeing the country through a new lens.
And for Bob, that lens is both literal and figurative. He always dreamed of documenting forgotten places.
Those overlooked corners of America.
Exactly. So he buys himself a Winnebago RV, packs it up, and heads out on his first big adventure.
And where does he decide to start this journey of self-discovery?
Turkey Run State Park in Indiana.
Beautiful park, actually. I've been there myself.
Yeah, peaceful, lots of nature trails. You'd think it would be the perfect place to kind of reconnect with yourself.
Seek solace in nature after a loss, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But almost immediately, things start to feel well off.
Like a wrong turn down a dark country road.
That's a good way to put it. His first stop is this gas station about 15 miles outside the park.
Setting the scene already.
Yeah. Bob describes it as practically deserted, flickering lights, eerie silence, almost like something out of a horror movie.
Oh, I hate that feeling when a place just feels wrong, you know?
Oh, yeah. And then there's the gas station attendant.
Okay, so we've got the creepy setting. Now introduce the creepy character.
This guy is moving in these jerky, almost unnatural ways, avoiding eye contact the whole time. And when Bob asks him about the park, the attendant gives him this very specific warning.
Uh-oh, red flag number one.
Right. He says, stay off the trails, especially anywhere near the old Holloway property.
The Holloway property that's going to come up again?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And then he says this line that just sends chills down your spine. Nothing good waiting for you there.
Okay, so it's not just stay on the marked trails advice. This is a straight-up warning.
It's like he knows something bad is going to happen.
And the way he delivers it, too, with those jerky movements and that averted gaze, it's like he's afraid of something.
Yeah, like he doesn't want to be seen talking about it.
Or like whatever's out there has affected him somehow.
Whoa. Okay, that's even creepier.
But it gets worse. Bob notices this old newspaper headline tacked to the counter,
Oh no, what does it say?
talking about unexplained disturbances at Turkey Run.
Unexplained disturbances, that's vague but ominous.
Yeah, and it mentions increased park ranger patrols after dark.
So whatever's going on, it's enough to warrant extra security.
Exactly. Like this quiet little part of Indiana has a hidden dark side.
And that newspaper clipping, you know, it lends a kind of unsettling credibility to the whole thing.
Right, it's not just some crazy story the attendant made up. There's documented evidence of something strange happening.
Makes you wonder what those unexplained disturbances were in the first place, right?
So for sure. So finally, Bob makes it to Turkey Run and meets Ranger Wilson at the check-in station.
And what's Ranger Wilson's take on all this? Well, first of all, he seems genuinely surprised to see Bob.
Surprised, like he wasn't expecting anyone to show up.
Yeah, he even comments on the bad weather that's been rolling through.
Like it's a reason for people to stay away.
Exactly. And then he assigns Bob a campsite way out in an isolated spot.
Isolated?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're adding isolation to the creepy vibes.
Yep. He mentions some vague maintenance issues with the other campsites, but it feels like an excuse.
Like he wants Bob as far away from the main areas as possible.
Right. And then comes another warning, this time from an official park ranger.
Oh, this can't be good. What does he say?
He tells Bob to stay inside his RV after sunset.
Okay, That's not that unusual advice for a campground. Sometimes there are bears or other wild animals you don't want to encounter in the dark.
Yeah, but Ranger Wilson's reasons are a little more unsettling. He says there have been some problems.
Problems? What kind of problems?
He doesn't elaborate, but he also mentions the wildlife behaving strangely.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely not your average campground warning.
And it's almost word for word what the gas station attendant said.
So now we've got two separate warnings from two completely different people, both pointing to something strange happening at Turkey Run.
And it seems to be connected to whatever's going on with the wildlife.
It makes you wonder what kind of problems could make a park ranger issue such a strong advisory.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what exactly are they dealing with out there?
And why is everyone being so vague about it?
Right. But Ranger Wilson isn't done yet. He pulls out a park map and specifically marks the northwestern section as completely off limits.
The northwestern section, the same area where the Holloway property is?
Yep, that whole section bordering the old property is strictly forbidden.
And what's his reason for this no-go zone?
Unsafe structures, sinkholes, he says. And he really emphasizes that it's not worth the risk.
Unsafe structures, sinkholes.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's trying to downplay it like it's just a safety hazard.
Yeah, but the way he says it, you can tell there's more to it than that.
It's like he's trying to discourage Bob from asking any more questions.
Exactly. So right from the get-go, Bob has these 3 distinct warnings all pointing towards the same area.
The Holloway property and the northwestern section of the park.
And all 3 warnings hint at something seriously wrong at Turkey Run.
It's definitely not the peaceful nature retreat Bob was hoping for.
Not even close. So Bob sets up camp in his isolated spot, and right away he notices how unnaturally quiet it is.
Unnaturally quiet, like too quiet.
Yeah, he says it's unlike any forest he's ever been in. No birds, seeming no insects chirping, just this unnerving silence.
Well, that would creep me out big time.
Yeah.
Like the calm before the storm.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. And then morning comes, and there's this incredibly dense fog.
Classic horror movie vibes.
Yeah, it's like the fog is setting the stage for something bad to happen.
Totally obscuring everything, hiding whatever's out there.
Right. Bai initially sticks to the main trails, taking photos, documenting the park, but even then he starts noticing some really strange things.
Like what?
Well, first he sees all these plants that look diseased, like something's sucking the life out of them.
Diseased plants.
Yeah.
Okay, that's weird.
Yeah, and then he finds multiple dead animals scattered around.
Multiple dead animals? What kind of animals?
Squirrels, rabbits, even a deer. He said they all looked healthy, otherwise no signs of injury.
So no obvious cause of death?
Nope, just dead. And then he sees something truly bizarre.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What is it?
What appear to be human footprints coming right out of the creek bed.
Human footprints coming out of the water now that is just creepy.
Right. Like whatever made those tracks, it wasn't swimming, it was walking out of the water.
Okay, so we've got diseased plants, unexplained animal deaths, and now creepy footprints emerging from a creek.
Turkey Run is not looking so peaceful anymore.
Not at all. It's like something out of a nightmare.
And it's about to get even worse.
Oh no. What happens next?
Bob's journalistic curiosity gets the better of him, and he finds himself drawn towards that forbidden northwestern boundary.
The one bordering the Holloway property?
Yep. He's careful at first, staying on the marked trail, but through breaks in the trees, he starts to see these concrete structures.
Structures like buildings?
Yeah, crumbling buildings, broken windows, collapsing roofs. Definitely man-made.
It's the Holloway Research Facility, isn't it?
Yeah, I got it. He zooms in with his camera and gets a closer look.
What does he see?
He says the whole place is overgrown with these really aggressive-looking vines.
Aggressive-looking vines? Like how?
He describes them as almost pulsating, like they're alive and moving.
Okay, that's creepy.
Yeah, and he manages to make out a partially obscured sign on one of the buildings.
What does it say?
Holloway Res CH Fac TAY.
Holloway Research Facility.
Yep, with a faded biohazard symbol underneath.
A biohazard symbol that is not a good sign.
Not at all. It confirms that there was something potentially dangerous going on at that facility.
Right, like whatever research they were doing, it involved biological hazards.
Exactly. And now this abandoned facility is just sitting there on the edge of a state park.
Unsecured, potentially leaking who knows what into the environment.
Yeah, it's a pretty disturbing thought. But hold on. It gets even creepier later that evening. Vob's going through his photos from the day.
Oh no, he sees something, doesn't he?
He does. In one of the photos of the facility zoomed in on a broken window, he spots a pale face staring out at him.
A face in the window of an abandoned building.
Yeah, he describes it as having milky white eyes, tight skin, almost like a mask.
Okay, that is seriously creepy.
And then the chilling realization hits him. He recognizes that face.
He recognizes, who is it?
It's the gas station attendant.
The gas station attendant. What was he doing at the Holloway facility?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It can't be a coincidence.
Definitely not. It suggests that the attendant isn't just some random creepy guy. He's somehow connected to whatever's going on at that facility.
And that description of his face, the milky white eyes, the tight skate, he's like something's wrong with him.
Like, he's been changed somehow.
Okay, so we've got the creepy warnings, the abandoned biohazard facility, and now a possible link between the gas station attendant and whatever's happening at Turkey Run.
And things are about to escalate very quickly.
How so?
That second night, the temperature suddenly plummets, like way below what the forecast predicted.
A sudden temperature drop. That's strange.
Yeah, the condensation on his RV windows freezes over, and he hears this slow, deliberate scratching sound moving around the outside of the vehicle.
Oh, that scratching sound that sends chills down my spine just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's like something's trying to get in.
And he's all alone out there in this isolated campsite.
Totally isolated. He tries to call for help, but there's no cell service, and his satellite internet is down.
Complete communication blackout. That's terrifying.
He's trapped, and whatever's out there knows it.
Okay, I'm getting major goosebumps here. What happens next?
Bob peeks out the frosted windows, trying to see what's making that scratching sound.
And he sees them, doesn't he?
In the dim moonlight, he sees these figures moving between the trees.
Figures like people.
They look human-shaped, but their movements are stiff and jerky, almost robotic.
Oh, God, that's so creepy.
Some of them are just standing there watching his RV, while others seem to be sniffing the air.
Like they're trying to track.
Exactly. And then the truly terrifying part, multiple voices, all speaking in perfect unison, call out his name.
They know his name.
They say, "Robert Miller, come outside."
That is so chilling. It's like they're inviting him to join them or something.
Yeah, or maybe they're trying to lure him out into the open.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
The voices eventually stop, but the figures remain outside his RV until dawn.
All night long, they just stand there watching him.
It's like a scene out of a nightmare.
And the fact that they know his name, it implies that they've been watching him. They know who he is.
Right, like they've been following him ever since he arrived at Turkey Run.
This is getting really disturbing.
In the morning, Bob finds these bizarre markings scraped into the frost on his windows.
Markings? What kind of markings?
Chemical formulas, biological diagrams.
Chemical formulas and diagrams on his RV windows.
Yeah, it's like someone or something was trying to communicate with him.
Or maybe leave a message.
A warning.
Maybe.
Or either way, it's incredibly unsettling. And the ground around the RV is covered in these strange footprints. Some of them elongated, like whatever made them had unusually long feet.
And there are handprints all over the RV, too.
Oh, right? Covered in them.
It's like they were studying his RV, touching it, examining it.
Maybe trying to figure out how to get inside.
Okay, this is officially terrifying.
Yeah, you'd think at this point Bob would be packing up and getting out of there as fast as possible.
Oh, I know, I would be.
But Bob's a journalist at heart.
So his curiosity outweighs his fear.
Exactly. He's driven by this need to understand what's happening at Turkey Run.
So what does he do?
He heads to the visitor center, hoping to find Ranger Wilson.
Maybe get some answers.
Right. But instead, he finds a really nervous information desk worker.
What does she say?
She claims that Ranger Wilson is sick.
Conveniently sick?
Yeah, and when Bob asks about the Holloway facility, she dismisses it as having burned down years ago.
Burned down?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound right.
Bob doesn't believe it either, and when he shows her his photos of the facility, her reaction is one of pure terror.
Oh, wow. So she knows something.
She knows something's up, but she's clearly afraid to talk about it.
Like she's worried about being overheard.
Exactly. She quickly scribbles a crude map of a service road exit on a piece of paper and practically shoves it into Bob's hands.
A secret exit.
Yeah, she tells him to get out of the park as fast as he can and to avoid sunlight.
Avoid sunlight. Why?
She doesn't explain, but she also warns him not to stop for anyone.
Don't stop for anyone. It sounds like she's sending him on a clandestine mission.
It's like she's trying to help him escape, but she's too afraid to do it openly.
So she gives him a secret map and cryptic warnings.
Yeah, it's a pretty desperate situation.
And it's about to get a whole lot worse, isn't it?
You bet. Back at his RV, Bob discovers that his keys are missing.
His keys are missing.
Gone.
Stolen.
It gets weirder. He eventually finds them inside his refrigerator.
Inside the refrigerator? That's bizarre.
And that's not all. Next to the keys is an unfamiliar vial filled with this viscous blue liquid.
A vial of blue liquid. What do you think it is?
Honestly, I have no idea, but it can't be good. Bob thankfully takes a picture of it, but doesn't touch it.
Smart move.
Yeah, who knows what that stuff could be?
It's like something out of a science fiction movie.
Right. Then things get even stranger. Bob's GPS mysteriously reactivates.
The GPS that was dead before.
Yep. It comes back online, and when he checks the map, the Holloway facility isn't shown as a patch of forest anymore.
What does it show?
It's labeled as an active complex.
Active, like it's still in operation.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's like the GPS is being controlled by something or someone.
This is seriously messing with my head.
And in a decision he'll probably regret for the rest of his life,
Yep.
Bob chooses to drive towards the Holloway facility.
He can't resist the pull of the mystery, can he?
Nope. He's driven by this need to understand what's really going on, even if it puts him in danger.
It's that journalist instinct.
Exactly. And what he finds at the facility is, well, truly disturbing.
Tell me everything.
It's definitely not abandoned. Some sections are clearly maintained with fresh paint and working lights.
So it's operational.
Yep. And the signs in the buildings are just ominous.
What kind of signs?
Things like cellular regeneration, trauma response testing, long-term subject housing.
Cellular regeneration, trauma response,
Right.
long-term subject housing. What does it all mean?
I don't know, but it sounds like some kind of messed up medical research.
Especially with the biohazard symbol we saw earlier.
Right, and then there's this newer looking sign that really sends chills down your spine.
What does it say?
Phase 3, trials resumed 2019.
Phase 3 trials resumed. So whatever they're doing, it's been going on for a while.
Yeah, and it's still active.
It confirms that the facility is not just operational, but that they're continuing their research.
And whatever that research is, it's clearly not ethical.
Definitely not. As sunset approaches, Bob hears movement coming from the largest building.
And unnatural voices like the ones he heard outside his RV.
Oh no, here they come.
And then they emerge from the building.
What do they look like?
Human-like. But with this disturbing translucent skin, you can see blue-black veins underneath and those same milky white eyes.
The same eyes as the gas station attendant.
Yep, and they're moving in these coordinated, jerky ways like they're being controlled by something.
Like puppets.
It's a horrifying sight.
And Bob's trapped there with them.
He knows he has to get out of there, but they're everywhere.
So what does he do?
He tries using his camera flash as a weapon.
His camera flash.
Yeah, the bright light seems to actually harm them.
Really?
They recoil from it like it burns their skin.
Interesting. So they're sensitive to light.
He manages to use the flash to create a distraction and flees into a drainage tunnel.
A tunnel, where does it lead?
It eventually emerges near Sugar Creek.
He's getting away.
Not so fast. More of those creatures are waiting for him outside the tunnel, and they're emerging from the water itself.
They can come out of the water?
Yeah, it's like they're everywhere he runs towards a bridge, hoping to escape. But they're pursuing him from both the land and the water.
He's surrounded.
He has nowhere to go, so he jumps from the bridge into Sugar Creek.
Into the water with those things.
It's a desperate move, but he's immediately dragged underwater.
Oh no.
He feels a sharp burning pain on his arm, like he's been bitten or stung.
And then what happens?
He has these fragmented memories of somehow reaching the main park entrance, and then everything goes black.
He blacks out.
He wakes up in the hospital.
What do the doctors say?
They're baffled by his condition. His wound isn't healing properly. There's this strange discoloration around it. His body temperature is abnormally low. He's extremely sensitive to light, and he keeps writing these incomprehensible notes in his sleep.
Incomprehensible notes? Like what?
Just gibberish symbols, strange diagrams. The doctors have no idea what they mean.
It's like something's messing with his mind.
Yeah, and then comes the confirmation that this is all very real and very dangerous.
What happens?
A package arrives, addressed to Bob from Holloway Pharmaceutical Solutions.
Holloway Pharmaceutical Solutions. So the facility is connected to a pharmaceutical company.
Yep. And the letter inside identifies Bob as Phase 4 trial participant, #347.
Trial participant, like he's part of an experiment.
Exactly, and it says he's undergoing spontaneous exposure protocol with full conversion anticipated within 60-90 days.
Full conversion. What does that even mean?
I don't know, but it doesn't sound good.
And there's something else. Isn't there a chilling detail?
Yeah, at the bottom of the letter it says retrieval team standing by.
A retrieval team. They're coming for him.
Bob's terrified. He knows he's becoming one of them.
So he goes into hiding,
He's staying at his sister's house, but he's basically isolated himself in the basement.
trying to protect his sister from whatever he's turning into.
And the transformation is progressing rapidly. His eyes are clouding over. He's experiencing those same jerky movements. He's losing chunks of time. He even finds mud on his shoes with no memory of going outside.
It's like he's losing control of his own body.
And his sister has seen him staring blankly in the direction of Indiana.
Like he's drawn back to the Holloway facility.
Or maybe to something else out there.
This is all so disturbing. And Bob's warning at the end of his story, it's a desperate plea for help.
He urges everyone to stay away from Turkey Run State Park and the area around the Holloway facility.
He believes the contamination is in the water.
He says to watch out for individuals exhibiting those same characteristics: milky white eyes, jerky movements, translucent skin.
And to report any sightings to federal authorities immediately.
He's terrified of full conversion and of that retrieval team coming for him.
He knows they're out there watching, waiting.
So what do we make of all this, Sarah?
It's a chilling story, Jack. A story of scientific hubris and the potential for good intentions to go horribly wrong.
We have this seemingly abandoned research facility secretly resuming operations, conducting these terrifying experiments with unknown consequences.
And Bob's account raises so many questions. What exactly were they researching at the Holloway facility? What is this full conversion they're talking about, and how far has this contamination spread?
And what about those creatures, those things that emerged from the water? Are they the result of those experiments or something else entirely?
And what does this all mean for the future? Is there a way to stop this conversion, or are we all at risk?
So many unanswered questions, so much uncertainty.
It's a story that stays with you long after you've heard it. A reminder that the world is full of mysteries and dangers that we may never fully understand.
And that sometimes the most beautiful places can hide the darkest secrets.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the unknown. Be careful out there, everyone.
And stay away from Turkey Run State Park.
All right, so we've got this warning, right? And it's really unlike anything I've ever seen before. It's basically, stay away from Turkey Run State Park in Indiana. Like, absolutely do not go there. And the person issuing it, Dr. Eleanor Kingsley, a mycologist.
A mycologist, huh? That's interesting. You don't often see scientists making these kinds of public statements about, a state park.
No, you really don't. And that's what caught my attention. I mean, this isn't your typical park closure like a storm or something.
Right. Not a bear on the loose or, some kind of contamination.
Exactly. This feels different. This warning is directly tied to Dr. Kingsley's own research, her own experiences at the park.
So it's personal. This deep dive, this is going to be something else, I can already tell.
Yeah, it is. And our mission today is to try and figure out what exactly happened to Dr. Kingsley, what she encountered that led to this, well, frankly, terrifying warning. Oh, yeah. We've got her logs, detailed personal logs from her research trip to Turkey Run. And let me tell you, the story that unfolds. It's like something out of a horror movie.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So we got this mycologist. She goes to this park for research, and something truly unsettling happens.
More than unsettling, like deeply disturbing. But to understand it all, we need to go back and look at Dr. Kingsley's background.
Right, set the stage.
So she published some controversial research on fungi, specifically their potential to, regenerate tissues.
Regenerate tissues, like healing.
Exactly. But her work was met with a lot of skepticism, pushback from the scientific community.
So she's kind of an outsider, maybe a bit of a maverick in her field.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
And then she hears these rumors, almost whispers really, about a unique fungal species in Indiana.
A new species.
Not necessarily new, but one with remarkable properties. And this is what draws her to Turkey Run.
Makes sense. A chance to maybe prove her theories, make a big discovery, redeem herself professionally.
Exactly. And she's serious about this research trip. She goes all out, outfits her RV. She actually named it the Forest River R-Pod 189 into this mobile laboratory.
Wow, so this isn't just a casual weekend camping trip.
No, not at all. She's prepared for serious on-site analysis.
But she expects to find something big.
Exactly. And she sets her sights on a specific location within the park. Gypsy Gulch.
Gypsy Gulch sounds mysterious.
It is. And even getting permission to go there wasn't easy. The local ranger, Ranger Patel, he was really hesitant to grant her access.
Even with the proper permits and all.
Yeah, even then. He kept talking about the rough terrain, strange animal behavior.
Strange how?
Like more aggressive than usual, unpredictable. But here's the really weird part. He mentions hikers reporting disorientation, even gaps in their memory after visiting Gypsy Gulch.
Whoa, that's creepy. Disorientation and memory gaps. That's not your typical hiking hazard.
Right. It's like something was messing with their minds.
Almost like some kind of, a neurological effect. Like a toxin or something.
Yeah, it's really strange. And Ranger Patel, he's clearly worried about something. He actually restricts public access to Gypsy Gulch altogether.
Seriously?
Yeah. Gives Dr. Kingsley a special key to the gate, makes her promise to check in every day.
Wow, he's taking precautions.
And he specifically warns her not to stay there after sunset. He talks about this thick fog that rolls in, really localized, makes it easy to get lost.
Okay, so there's this weird fog, too. This whole place sounds like it's straight out of a folklore story.
I know, right? It's like he knows something bad is going to happen.
Foreboding.
Yeah, very much so.
So what happens when Dr. Kingsley finally gets to Gypsy Gulch? What's it like?
Well, she describes it as this pristine, untouched ravine. Lush vegetation, a stream running through it, the air thick and humid, almost oppressive.
Oppressive?
Yeah, like you could feel the weight of the place. And she starts taking samples, looking for this unusual fungus.
And does she find it?
Right away, she finds these networks of white, thread-like structures in the soil. Mycelium, it's called, the main body of a fungus.
Okay, so she finds the fungus. Anything unusual about it besides just being there?
Oh yeah, get this. It reacts incredibly fast to vibrations. Like super fast.
Vibrations. How could a fungus even detect that?
That's the thing. It's not typical fungal behavior at all. She's already noticing things that are off.
So right from the start, there are these red flags. But she keeps going, right? Driven by the research.
Exactly. She's got this tunnel vision, focused on her work, and then comes the first truly disturbing observation.
Uh-oh.
She accidentally cuts her finger while working, and some of her blood gets on a slide with the fungal spores. You know, the microscopic seeds of the fungus.
Yeah, I'm following.
And under the microscope, she sees the spores moving. They start moving towards her blood.
Moving towards her blood, like, intentionally.
It seems like it, and they speed up as they get closer.
That's not normal at all. Not for any fungus I've ever heard of.
Yeah, this is where things take a serious turn. And remember, she's all alone out there in this isolated gulch.
Yeah, not a good situation to be in when you start seeing things that defy basic biology.
You got that right. It's getting late. She's working in her mobile lab, and that's when she hears it. This squelching sound, like footsteps, but multiple sets of footsteps coming closer.
Oh no. In the dark.
In the dark. She describes it as rhythmic, deliberate, like something is approaching her, purposefully. And the sound gets closer and closer.
I'm getting chills just hearing this. So what does she do?
She's terrified, obviously. Locks herself in the RV. And then, just like Ranger Patel warned, the fog starts rolling in.
The fog, that thick, localized fog.
Yeah, but this fog, it's different. It has this bioluminescence, this pale blue-green glow.
Glowing fog.
Glowing fog. At first she thinks it might be some type of bioluminescent fungus. You know, those exist.
Right. I've seen pictures. Some of them are actually quite beautiful.
Yeah, but this is different. The light is too intense, and it's pulsating, in sync with that squelching sound.
Okay, that is definitely not normal. Pulsating, glowing fog. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It's seriously creepy. And then she sees them. Through the fog, these shapes start to emerge. Humanoid shapes.
Oh.
She grabs her camera, manages to snap a few pictures. They're blurry, but they confirm what she's seeing. Human-like figures covered in patches of this glowing fungus.
No way. So it's not just a strange fungus, it's affecting people.
It seems that way, and the fungus, it's concentrated around their heads, their joints.
Like it's controlling them.
That's the thought that must have been going through her mind. She counts at least 7 of them before they disappear back into the fog.
7. This is turning into a nightmare.
It really is. And she's stuck in that RV, surrounded by whatever those things are.
So what does she do? Does she try to leave?
She can't. It's the middle of the night, the fog is thick, and those things are out there. She's trapped.
Trapped. With her research equipment. The mycologist in her must be going into overdrive.
You bet. She stays up all night analyzing samples, looking at those blurry photos. And under the microscope, she starts seeing even more disturbing details.
What?
The fungal mycelium, those thread-like structures, they're forming patterns that look just like neurons. You know, the cells in our brains.
Wait, are you saying this fungus mimics brain structure?
It appears that way. And then she applies a mild electrical current to the sample, just a tiny bit. And the whole network responds.
Responds how?
Pulses of light, synchronized across the entire sample, like it has its own nervous system reacting to the stimulus.
That is just wrong on so many levels. It's like this fungus is thinking.
Yeah, that's the truly unsettling part. This isn't just some random weird fungus, it's something else. And it's clearly interacting with those things she saw outside.
Okay, but where did it come from? How did it even get there? This whole thing is so bizarre.
That's what she wants to find out. She starts digging into the history of Gypsy Gulch, uses her satellite internet connection to do some research.
What does she find?
Well, it turns out Gypsy Gulch was part of a military testing area back in the 60s and 70s.
Military testing. What kind of testing?
Classified. All she finds is a name, Project Regenesis. And that triggers some vague memories, rumors she'd heard about Cold War experiments involving biological regeneration.
Biological regeneration, like regrowing limbs?
Something like that. It was
What?
all very hush-hush, supposedly aimed at helping wounded soldiers.
Right, right. I've heard of those kinds of projects, pushing the boundaries of science for military gain. So this fungus, could it be connected to that?
It's starting to look that way. And it explains the secrecy, the Rangers' warnings, everything.
This is getting really deep. So, knowing all this, does Dr. Kingsley decide to leave?
She considers it. I mean, who wouldn't? But her scientific curiosity, that drive to understand, it wins out.
She's a dedicated researcher.
To a fault, maybe. She decides to stay, be extra careful, moves her equipment further away from the ravine, starts wearing a respirator.
At least she's taking some precautions.
Yeah, some. But she's still in danger. And it's not just from those creatures. The fungus itself is a threat.
Right, because it seems to be doing more than just, growing in the soil.
So much more. That afternoon, she makes another horrifying discovery. She finds the remains of a deer, completely enveloped by the fungus.
Enveloped, like decomposed.
Not exactly. It's formed this perfect skeletal outline, but instead of flesh and organs, there are these glowing filaments of the fungus.
In place of the organ, so the fungus replaced them.
It's more than that. The bones themselves look altered, partially dissolved and rebuilt with fungal matter. Like the fungus wasn't just breaking down the deer, it was reconstructing it.
This is just getting weirder and weirder. It's like this fungus is, I don't even know what to call it, reanimating.
Yeah, it's hard to even describe. It's like it's taking over, repurposing organic matter for its own agenda.
This is some serious body horror stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And it gets worse. She starts mapping the spread of the fungus, and it's concentrated in this circular area, about half a mile across.
A circular area, like a zone of infection.
Exactly. And at the center of this zone, an old concrete structure, almost completely buried. Looks like a bunker entrance, rusted metal door, a faded military insignia. And it's not on any of her maps.
This has Project Regenesis written all over it. I bet you anything that bunker is connected to those experiments.
It definitely seems that way. And as she gets closer to the bunker, the fungal growth gets denser, the air even thicker and more humid.
She's getting closer to the heart of this thing.
Yeah, and then she finds it, partially buried in the fungal mat. A military ID tag.
Oh, wow.
It reads, Murphy, J, Project Regenesis Subject 23, along with some numbers. Physical evidence connecting the fungus to those experiments.
The actual people. This is getting really real.
It is. And at this point, she's facing a major dilemma. She knows she should report this, get out of there.
Huh.
But the scientist in her, that drive to
It's
understand.
a powerful pull, especially when you're on the verge of something huge, maybe even career-defining.
Exactly. She makes the fateful decision to stay one more day, gather more evidence. And that night, things get really bad.
Okay, tell me about it.
The fog rolls in again, thicker than before. And she hears that squelching sound again. But now there's something else too, a clicking sound, rhythmic, like insects, but coming from all directions.
Communication, like they're talking to each other.
It sure seems like it. And when she looks out, there are more of them now, at least 15 figures. And in the dim light, she can see them more clearly.
Oh, no.
Decomposing bodies, the glowing fungus erupting from their eyes, ears, mouths. Some are wearing tattered military uniforms, others what look like hospital gowns. It's a horrifying sight.
A true nightmare. This isn't just science gone wrong. It's something out of a horror movie.
It is. And then they surround her RV, just stand there in a circle, swaying slightly, the clicking intensifying. She's trapped, surrounded by these things.
She must have been terrified.
Absolutely. But even in that state of fear, she keeps observing, keeps working. She goes back to her microscope, looks at the spores again.
And what does she see?
Something truly terrifying. The spores, they have this incredible ability to penetrate cell membranes, like incredibly fast and efficiently.
Cell membranes. So they can basically get inside any living cell.
Yeah, she even watches it happen using her own blood. The spores swarm the red blood cells, attach themselves, and start changing their structure within minutes.
So that's how the infection spreads. It gets inside you at a cellular level.
Exactly. And then it hits her.
Yeah.
She's been breathing this air, wearing a respirator,
Yeah.
but how effective has it really been?
Oh, no.
She checks the filter, and there's a fine layer of spores clinging to it. She doesn't know how long they've been there, how much exposure she's had, and she starts examining her skin, looking for any sign of infection.
She must be panicking at this
I
point.
can't even imagine the thought of those spores inside her already at work.
It's a truly insidious threat. Invisible, unstoppable. And all the time, those things are outside, surrounding her RV.
Right. And then around 3 a.m., their behavior changes again. They start stomping their feet, hitting the ground rhythmically.
Creating vibrations.
Exactly. And with each impact, the glowing fungus on them pulses brighter. It goes on for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Then they suddenly stop and disappear back into the fog.
All of them.
All except one. A woman in tattered military fatigues. She stays standing right in front of Dr. Kingsley's RV door. And through the window, she speaks.
Speaks. What does she say?
You will join the network. Her voice is raspy, broken, but the words are clear. And then she just stands there, silent, until dawn. Dr. Kingsley huddles inside, documenting everything, trying to figure out what to do.
Oh my God. That's terrifying. It's like a warning, a threat.
It's both. And when dawn finally breaks, the woman leaves. But not before dropping something at the door.
What?
The military ID tag, the one she found earlier, now covered in fresh, rapidly growing fungus. She waits a couple of hours, uses a grabber tool to get the ID, seals it in a biohazard bag.
She's still thinking like a scientist, even in this situation.
It's incredible, but she's running out of time. She risks a radio call to Ranger Patel, asks him about the military history of Gypsy Gulch.
And how does he react?
He freaks out, tells her to get out, leave everything behind, come straight to the ranger station.
So he knows. He knows what's going on there.
He knows. He says it was supposed to be contained, decommissioned, but every few years, someone disappears in that gulch.
It's like a recurring nightmare, and he's helpless to stop it.
Exactly. He's clearly terrified for her, begs her to just leave. And as she's packing up, she sees it,
Sees what?
the infection,
Yeah.
on her own hand, right where she cut her finger. A small patch of blue-green glowing skin.
Oh, God, no.
She looks at it under the microscope, sees the fungal filaments spreading between her cells, heading for her blood vessels. She injects herself with a broad-spectrum antifungal, but nothing. It has no effect.
It's immune to our medications. That's bad. Really bad.
Yeah. She starts the RV, tries to leave. But the main road is blocked by a fallen tree.
A fallen tree.
It's not a normal tree. It's this
thing.
made of branches and a pulsating mass of that glowing fungus. And as she gets closer, it starts moving towards her RV, growing rapidly.
Like it's trying to stop her. Like it's
Yeah.
aware.
It's terrifying. She throws the RV in reverse, turns around, heads back towards the ravine, hoping to find another way out.
A desperate escape attempt.
Desperate and dangerous. The infection is spreading up her arm, and something even worse is happening. She's feeling this calm, this unnatural sense of peace.
Peace in this situation.
It's not real peace. She remembers reading about it in the Project Regenesis documents. The fungus, it affects the host's brain chemistry.
Like mind control.
It's trying to make her cooperative, to make her join the network.
It's fighting her, not just physically, but mentally.
She's fighting back, trying to stay focused, to stay in control. The service road is rough. The RV is taking a beating, but she keeps going. And finally, after what seems like forever, she reaches a clearing. But it's not on any of her maps.
Another unmapped area.
It's circular, completely devoid of normal vegetation. Just this dense, pulsating carpet of the glowing fungus.
Like a nest, a hive.
Yeah, something like that. And in the center, standing perfectly still, is another figure. This one is completely covered in the fungus, but it's moving differently, smoothly, purposefully. And when she stops the RV, it turns and starts walking towards her.
Oh.
She locks the doors, watches as it gets closer. She can barely make out the remnants of a military uniform beneath the fungal growth, and then it reaches the hood of the RV, places its hands on the metal, and the engine dies.
Stop the engine.
Everything shuts down, all her electronics go dead. The only light is from the glowing fungus, and through the windshield she sees its face. Still human, just barely recognizable, the eyes clouded, but aware.
And knows she's there.
And then it speaks. Dr. Kingsley, it says, and its voice is clear, strong, not like the raspy voice of the woman earlier. We've been waiting for someone with your expertise. The network requires expansion.
The network, it's talking about itself as a collective.
It is. Project Regenesis created us, it continues. Soldiers injected with regenerative spores. The network was an unintended side effect. We are not dead, Doctor. We are transformed. And you will help us perfect the transformation.
It's telling her its origin story and its plans for her.
And as it's speaking, dozens more of them emerge from the surrounding forest, forming a circle around her RV. She's completely trapped.
This is the climax. It's all come down to this.
It has. But in that moment of desperation, she remembers something. Intense heat can destroy fungal structures.
Fire.
Fire. She throws open all the propane valves, flooding the RV with gas. Then she grabs her flare gun, aims, and fires it into the fungal carpet in the clearing.
She's going all in.
She has no choice. The mycelium ignites instantly. A wall of fire erupts. The infected recoil. There's a gap in their circle. She grabs her backpack and runs.
Is escaping.
She's trying. But the forest itself seems to be working against her, roots and vines snagging at her, trying to hold her back. And the infection, it's spreading, reaching her shoulder now. She can feel it affecting her mind, urging her to stop, to turn back.
It's fighting her on every level. Physically, mentally, even environmentally.
She pushes through it all, focuses on the sound of a distant highway. After what feels like an eternity, she bursts out of the trees onto a country road. And by pure luck, a logging truck is coming down the road.
Oh, wow. A stroke of luck.
Yeah, it's her only chance. The driver slams on his brakes, clearly shocked by her appearance. She makes up a story, offers him a lot of money to take her to the nearest hospital.
She's not going to tell him the truth, is she?
She knows better. She just needs to get help. She needs to get to somewhere safe.
So she gets to the hospital. What happens then?
The small town hospital, they're completely unequipped for this. But they do their best, isolate her, contact the CDC.
The CDC. For a fungal infection.
This isn't just any fungal infection. They don't know the full story, of course. She gives them a sanitized version, talks about a research accident, downplays the severity. But the infection, it keeps spreading.
How bad does it get?
It reaches her spine, starts causing muscle spasms. And worse, she starts experiencing these dissociative episodes. Moments where she feels like she's outside her own body, watching herself.
Like the fungus is taking over.
It's getting a foothold in her mind. And the doctors, they're trying everything they can, but nothing works. In a brief moment of clarity, she convinces a nurse to get her phone back.
Her phone? What for?
She uploads all her research data, sends coded messages to a few colleagues she trusts. She knows time is running out. That night, she experiences a full-blown dissociation.
She loses control completely.
She watches from outside herself as her body gets out of bed, tries to leave the isolation room. The fungus is pulling her, drawing her somewhere.
To network?
Maybe. But the CDC team never arrives. Instead, the next morning, the hospital is swarming with military personnel.
They knew. They knew all along.
They knew. They sedate her, transport her to this facility. Turns out it's the former Jefferson Proving Ground, an old, decommissioned military testing site.
It was never really decommissioned, was
Nope. Project Regenesis was just moved, hidden even deeper. She drifts in and out of consciousness, but she picks up pieces of information.
What kind of information?
The fungus. It's not from Earth. It arrived on a meteorite in 1965.
An extraterrestrial fungus.
An extraterrestrial fungus. And the military, they were trying to weaponize it to create this regenerative system for soldiers. The fact that it preserves neural patterns, that was actually seen as a benefit.
A benefit. They wanted to control minds.
It's messed up. And during one of her lucid periods, a senior researcher, Dr. Harmon, he actually talks to her.
Talks to her. Why?
He's fascinated by her resistance to the fungus. Most subjects, they succumb completely within 48 hours. But she's holding on, still has some degree of individual awareness.
Because she's a mycologist. Because she understands fungi better than anyone.
He thinks that might be a factor. And when she asks him about those infected people at Turkey Run,
What does he say?
they were the original test subjects from 1972. They were supposed to be terminated when the project was officially shut down.
But they weren't.
The fungus, it preserved their neural patterns too well. They've been living in the park for decades, monitored, but basically left alone.
As long as they stayed put, they were no threat. So inhumane. Just abandoned.
It's chilling. And after 10 days in that facility, she manages to escape.
How?
During a power outage, the lock on her room malfunctions. And that's when she discovers something amazing. Terrifying,
Right.
but amazing.
What?
She can sense the other infected subjects, communicate with them on a basic level through the network.
Yeah, she's part of it now. Connected.
But she still has her own thoughts, her own memories. She's a hybrid. And she uses this connection to orchestrate a distraction, slip out unnoticed.
A hybrid, individual and collective at the same time. I don't even have words for that.
She escapes, heads north, finds this isolated cabin in Michigan.
Goes into hiding.
She has to. She's been documenting everything, studying her own transformation, searching for a way to stop it. But the fungus, it keeps spreading.
Is there any hope for her?
She doesn't know. She understands now that the fungus, it doesn't necessarily destroy the host. It creates a symbiosis.
Symbiosis. Living together. Two beings in one.
But it's a battle for dominance. Sometimes she feels fully integrated with the network, sensing the presence of others, even their thoughts. Other times, her own sense of self comes back.
So she's fighting for her individuality against this alien intelligence.
She's trying. But those moments of autonomy are getting shorter, further apart. And that brings us back to her warning.
The warning to stay away from Turkey Run.
She believes the fungus is spreading, that the military can't contain it. She doesn't know how much longer she can hold on.
So this isn't just her story, it's a warning for all of us.
It is. She says to stay away from Turkey Run, especially Gypsy Gulch. Don't collect samples. If you see glowing fungus, report it, but stay away.
She's risking everything to get this message out.
She's trying to warn us. She's trying to protect us from what's coming. And her final piece of advice: if the military comes asking, deny everything.
Deny everything. She knows they're involved, that they're still trying to control this thing.
She knows too much, and they can't let that information get out. Her story, her warning, it's a game changer. It forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about fungi, about alien life, about consciousness itself.
It challenges our understanding of what it means to be human.
Exactly. And she leaves us with this. What is the future of humanity in the face of this alien intelligence? Is it evolution or extinction? Is it connection or annihilation?
A chilling question.
It's a question we all need to be asking ourselves. Because what's happening at Turkey Run, it might just be the beginning.
The beginning of the end, or the beginning of something new entirely.
The possibilities are both fascinating and terrifying. But one thing's for sure. We need to be paying attention.
Okay, so, welcome to the deep dive. You guys know how this works, right? You send us stuff that you want us to, go through, get to the bottom of. Could be articles, could be some research papers, maybe even just a crazy story from a friend. And then we sort through it all, figure out the good stuff, and try to present it in a way that hopefully makes sense and sticks with you.
You got it. It's all about getting seriously informed, quickly, and maybe even having some fun while we're at it.
Exactly. And today's deep dive, well, it's a bit of a chilling one. We're looking at a story, an account sent to us by one of you, actually.
That's right. We're going deep into this testimony, this really personal narrative written by Lucas Martins. He's a documentary filmmaker, focused a lot of his work on abandoned places.
Abandoned places, always kind of creepy, right?
Yeah, always a little eerie. But this isn't just some official report. It's more like a personal diary. And it only came to light because of something called a dead man switch.
Okay, dead man switch. That sounds ominous.
It is a bit, yeah. Basically, it's like a trigger, something set up beforehand that automatically releases information if the person doesn't check in, confirm they're okay. So the fact that this switch was activated, well, it tells us this is not your average travel blog.
Not at all. So Martins, he's out there seeking out these forgotten places, and now, well, he's holed up in some remote farmhouse in Wisconsin, experiencing some seriously weird stuff, physically, mentally. It's all changing. And what he wrote, it's a warning.
A warning, for sure. And at the center of this whole thing are the questions that drew him in the first place. What exactly went down in Millbrook, Indiana? Why did everyone leave so fast? And the big one, how is that affecting Martins now? What was this deadly mistake he mentioned? That's what we're going to try to figure out.
All right, so let's get into it. Martin's journey to this place, Millbrook, it all started with something we've probably all seen, an anonymous email.
Ah, the classic anonymous tip. Intriguing and always a little bit suspect.
Right. And this email, I had dash cam footage of Millbrook. Apparently, this town lost a crazy amount of people, 80% of its population vanished all in 6 months. I mean, that's unheard of, right?
It is. To have that kind of sudden exodus is extremely rare. It just doesn't happen like that.
And the footage itself, totally a ghost town. Empty streets, buildings boarded up, nobody around. You see that, you know something's up, especially for someone like Martins, who's made a career out of documenting these empty places.
Absolutely. For him, this must have been like striking gold, but in a really unsettling way.
But it wasn't just the emptiness, right? The email mentioned these strange figures just lurking in the background of the footage, like a hint, right? That there's something more going on than just, say, people moving away because the economy's bad or some environmental issue. The email even specifically says economic collapse and environmental contamination, but suggests those are fake explanations, a cover-up. It makes you think, how often did this kind of thing happen? How often are we not being told the truth?
Yeah, you're right. It makes you wonder. And that lack of transparency, the fact that Martins couldn't find much in public records except a brief mention of some ongoing environmental assessment. Well, that often means something's being hidden. For a journalist like Martin's, that's like catnip.
Totally. So Martins, with this creepy information and a head full of questions, packs up his Mercedes-Benz Sprinter Storyteller, which, by the way, sounds like a super cool mobile investigation unit,
Right. A journalist's dream setup.
and heads to Millbrook. He thinks he's going to find a story about a town that's just been left behind, right? But what he's walking into, it's something way worse.
Yeah, the story takes a turn, and the journey itself starts getting weird. It wasn't just driving to a deserted town. It was like the whole environment was giving off bad vibes.
Yeah, and it starts with these small details he notices on the road, like vandalized road signs, but not just any vandalism, right? These deep scratches. He even wonders if they could be bite marks. That's not a good sign when you're headed to a place that's already supposed to be creepy, right?
Not at all. And then there are the mile markers, the ones that are like uprooted, bent out of shape. It's like something powerful went through there. And I don't mean a storm. Something was struggling, I guess.
And then it gets even weirder. He finds 3 abandoned cars, doors wide open, stuff scattered everywhere, but no people. Like they just vanished in the middle of driving. What would make someone just leave their car like that?
It's a good question. And then about 5 miles outside of Millbrook, his cell service dies completely. That's a classic horror movie trope, right?
Yeah.
But here, it suggests that someone's actively blocking signals in and out of the area. Like they're trying to keep Millbrook isolated, keep whatever's happening there contained. Makes you think about how vulnerable we all are, relying on our tech all the time.
Totally. And then there's this really messed up detail, roadkill. But it's fresh, and it looks like it was partially eaten and then just left. Like whatever was eating it, it wasn't hungry, it was, I don't know, doing something else.
Yeah, that's definitely a red flag. It's not just scavengers doing their thing.
Yeah.
Something else is going on.
And it's cold, like unusually cold for September. He mentions it's 48 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's quiet, too quiet. No birds, no insects, no animals at all. Like the whole area is holding its breath, waiting for something.
It's giving off major stay-away vibes.
So Martins finally arrives in Millbrook, and at first, it is what he expected.
Yeah.
A typical Midwestern town, but deserted. But even in those first few moments, there are things that are thought off, like personal belongings just left behind everywhere, like people left in a huge hurry.
Yeah, that's not normal for a town that's been slowly dying. Usually people pack up, they move their stuff out. But here, it's like they grabbed whatever they could and ran, left everything else behind.
Exactly. And then he sees it. A face, gray-skinned, no expression, staring at him from a second-story window.
Yeah.
And then, poof, it's gone. This isn't just an empty town. It's a town where something else is living now.
That's the moment where most people would nope right out of there.
Yeah.
Get back in the RV and drive as far away as possible.
Right. But Martins, he's curious. He's got that journalist instinct to document, to understand what's happening. And he decides to leave the RV and go check things out. That, as we know, is the deadly mistake he was talking about.
A mistake that changed everything for him.
So he heads towards the old hardware store, the building where he saw the face in the window. And the closer he gets, the creepier it gets. The town square is totally silent, but there are all these signs that something's really wrong.
Like the doorknobs. They're gnawed on, chewed up. And not just the wooden ones, the metal ones too. What could do that? I mean, it's not just some kids messing around. Whatever did that was strong and had some weird teeth.
Yeah, and the windows are broken, but from the inside out, it's like whatever's in these buildings wanted to get out badly. And then there are these dark stains on the pavement. He describes them as looking like blood. This isn't a town that just emptied out. Something violent happened here.
Something went very, very wrong in Millbrook.
The hardware store door is open a crack, just enough to be inviting. Or a trap. Inside, it's a mess, but it doesn't look like anyone was looting. Martin says it's more like a struggle took place, like people were fighting for their lives.
Right. If someone's looting, they're taking stuff. But here, it's just chaos, like a fight broke out.
Yeah.
And people were just trying to survive.
And the smell. Oh, God, the smell. He describes it as a mix of antiseptic, like you'd smell in a hospital, and rotting meat. Not a good combination.
No, not at all. A very bad sign.
And there are more bite marks, this time on the wooden tool handles. Again, whatever did this was strong and had some serious teeth.
And it was inside the store.
The whole time he's in the store, Martins has this feeling of being watched. Like something's there, just out of sight, waiting. That primal fear, the one that tells you to run even when you don't see the danger yet.
It's our instincts, our intuition kicking in. And they're usually right.
Then, a crash from the back room breaks the silence. Martin sees something moving back there. He calls out, trying to be the journalist, asking if anyone's there. But no answer. Just a dragging sound, like footsteps, but thought off. Definitely not human.
So much for journalistic detachment at that point, I would think.
He finds an empty space, a door leading to a storeroom, and then, boom, a figure lunges at him from the shadows. It's the gray-skinned man from the window. And Martins, he describes him so well. Stiff, but with these bursts of sudden movement. His eyes are cloudy, but they're focused, locked onto Martins. It's like his body's not working right, but his mind, whatever's left of it, is totally intent on attacking.
That combination of physical impairment and that intense, almost predatory focus is really unsettling.
Yeah, and he mentions the guy's teeth. They're stained dark, like something's rotting in his mouth. And his movements, they're jerky, almost robotic, but he's fast, like way too fast for how messed up he looks.
It's like a whole different way of moving. It's suggesting that whatever happened to these people has changed them down to a basic biological level.
Martins, he uses a shelf to block the guy for a second, just enough time to run. But as he's getting out of the store, he sees more of them coming out of the shadows. 3 more, at least. And again, they're moving together, like they're coordinating their attack. This isn't just random aggression, it's something planned, organized.
And they're not moaning, they're not shambling around like the typical zombies you see in movies. They're moving deliberately. It's like they still have some intelligence, or at least some kind of drive, some purpose guiding them.
When he gets back out to the town square, he realizes just how bad it is. There are more of them out there, all over the place, and they're all watching him. With that same predatory stare, they've got him surrounded.
And he starts to see them more clearly in the fading light. They're decaying, some of them have injuries, but they're still moving, still focused on him. He notices that some of them are wearing bits of uniforms, like maybe they were cops, firefighters, just regular people who lived in Millbrook.
And their skin. It's that mottled gray with black veins pulsing underneath. Like whatever's infecting them is right there on the surface for everyone to see.
A very visual, very disturbing sign of what's happened to them.
And then the really scary part, they all start moving towards him at the same time, like they planned it. This is the moment where Martins has to realize this is way more than just some abandoned town. This is something else entirely.
He's stumbled into something much, much bigger and way more dangerous than he expected.
He runs for the post office. It's the closest building, and he manages to barricade the door just in time. From inside, he watches them. They're forming a perimeter around the building, communicating with each other using gestures. It's creepy and organized and just confirms that they are not just mindless monsters.
That level of organization, that ability to communicate and coordinate, that's one of the most disturbing things about this whole story. It's not just instinct driving them. There's something else there. Something. Thinking.
Inside the post office, he finds clues. There's a big mat on the wall, and the municipal water treatment facility is circled in red. And there are sticky notes everywhere, little messages that are seriously creepy. Contamination spreading through groundwater, infection rate accelerating. Now this one, cognitive retention varies with proximity to source. That's the one that really gets me. It's like they were trying to figure out what was happening, how it was spreading, how much of the people who were infected were still themselves, I guess.
It's a chilling thought. It's like they were watching their friends, their neighbors become something else and trying to understand what was happening to them.
And then he finds it. A county emergency management briefcase. Inside, there's a journal and a bunch of classified documents all about something called Project Lazarus. This is where it goes from a scary story to something way bigger, something maybe even a conspiracy.
The conspiracy angle always adds another layer of intrigue, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Especially when it involves government secrets and potential cover-ups.
The journal belonged to a CDC epidemiologist, Dr. Eliza Harrison. Her notes, they're all about this unusual neurological condition, and it all started near a government facility in a cave system, and guess what? It was in the water supply.
So, not just a random outbreak then. Something was going on in that facility that caused this.
She's the one who names it the Lazarus pathogen, and the things she writes about what it does. Chilling.
Yeah.
It regenerates cells, that's one thing. But it also preserves neural function, which explains why the infected are so aware, why they can work together. The scariest part is that it was meant to be a good thing. They were trying to heal people, and it turned into this.
The good intentions gone wrong trope. It's a classic for a reason, right? It's always terrifying to think about how something meant to help could end up being so destructive.
Totally. Then there are the classified documents. Turns out Project Lazarus was this big secret project run by DARPA and the CDC. They were doing research on cellular regeneration using pions, and they were doing it in this old Cold War bunker. But then there was a containment breach, and the water supply got contaminated. That's how it all started.
And the really disturbing part is that there were orders to terminate the project, to burn the whole area down, but they never did it. So they knew how dangerous this thing was, they knew what was out there,
Right.
and they did nothing, or at least nothing that they're telling us about.
And then there's the threat assessment memo. This is the one that lays it all out. Regular weapons, they barely work on these things. And the memo estimates that the infected retain something like 70 to 85% of their cognitive function. That means they're not mindless, they can think, they can plan, they can learn.
That's what makes them so different from the typical zombie scenario. They're not just driven by hunger or a basic instinct to spread. They have some level of awareness, some ability to think and act strategically. That's what makes them so dangerous.
So Martins, he knows he's got to get out of that post office. He finds a way out through the loading dock, but of course there are more of them out there. He's watching them, how they move, how they behave, and he notices more details. They're sniffing the air, like they're tracking him by scent, and they're communicating not just with gestures, but with these low vocalizations, almost like animal sounds. And those black veins, they're pulsing, almost like a heartbeat.
It's like watching something human become something else. Something that's still recognizable, but fundamentally different.
He manages to use his drone, the one with the LED light, as a distraction to get to his RV, but when he gets there, it's surrounded. He manages to start the engine and drive away, but some of them are clinging to the RV, trying to get in. It's a close call, and he has to drive like crazy to shake them off.
He's lucky he even made it out of there alive.
Yeah.
It's a testament to his resourcefulness, I guess, being a documentarian, having to think on his feet in dangerous situations.
But the escape wasn't over. He comes to this barricade in the road, something they must have built to keep people in or out. He ends up having to drive off-road, in the dark, to get away. It wasn't just about escaping the infected, it was about escaping whatever was controlling the area around Millbrook. Someone or something wanted to keep whatever was happening there contained.
Which just adds to the mystery, right? Who's in charge here? Who's calling the shots? And what are they trying to hide?
He stops a little while later, outside of Millbrook, and that's when it hits him. He notices this metallic taste in his mouth, and when he checks his RV's water tank, there's this dark residue in it. He realizes that the water hookup at the RV park in Millbrook, it must have been contaminated. He'd been drinking the water, showering. It's a punch in the gut, realizing that his own vehicle, his home, it was the thing that infected him.
Such a horrible realization to know that the very thing you thought was keeping you safe was actually exposing you to this deadly pathogen. It's a cruel twist of fate.
He tries to do the right thing. When he gets to Indianapolis, he contacts the FBI, figures they're the ones who need to know about this, but big mistake. They detain him, take all his evidence, and basically threaten him, tell him to stop spreading misinformation. It's clear. They know what's happening, and they're trying to cover it up.
The cover-up is almost always worse than the actual event, right?
Yeah.
It erodes trust. It creates fear and uncertainty. It makes you wonder what else they're hiding, what else they're not telling us.
For sure. And they search his RV, supposedly sanitize his water tanks, but it doesn't matter. A week later, after he uses the RV's water to shower, he notices it.
His joints are stiff, and there are those dark veins, just like the infected in Millbrook. He knows he's got it.
The pathogen, it's insidious. It gets into your system, and it changes you from the inside out.
Yeah.
And there's no cure, no treatment, at least none that we know of.
So he makes a decision. He drives north, finds this isolated farmhouse in Wisconsin. He knows what's happening to him, and he decides to document it, the whole process as it happens. A scientist in his own right, I guess, observing the changes, recording them for posterity. It's a grim task, but in a way, it's also an act of defiance. He's not going down without a fight.
Over the next 3 months, the changes in his body are huge. He develops these gray patches on his skin. His body temperature plummets to 94 degrees and stays there. Imagine that.
That's not just a fever. That's a fundamental change in how his body regulates temperature. It suggests that the pathogen is literally rewriting his biological code.
He can't feel pain as much, but he's getting stronger, more stamina too. He doesn't need to sleep much anymore, and he's not hungry at all. It's like he's becoming something else entirely, something not human.
And yet, he's still aware. He's still documenting everything. It makes you wonder what's going on in his mind, how he's processing all this. It must be terrifying and fascinating all at the same time.
And then there are these fugue states. He loses track of time, hours go by, and when he comes to, he finds he's done things he doesn't remember. Maps, really detailed maps of the area around the farmhouse. Weapons, crude but effective. And one time, he almost contaminated his own well. It's terrifying, realizing that he's losing control, that something else is directing his actions.
It's like the pathogen is slowly taking over not just his body, but his mind, too. It's turning him into something that's no longer fully human, something that's part of a larger interconnected network.
He talks about this sense of a collective consciousness, a network of minds all linked together, calling him to join them. He can feel it growing stronger as he gets sicker, and he even feels sympathy for them. He understands their perspective, their idea of evolution. He's fighting it, but it's getting harder and harder.
It's like they're offering him a place, a purpose in this new world, this new way of being. And it's tempting, especially as his own humanity, his own individual identity is fading away.
Knowing that he's losing this battle, he does what he can. He rigs the farmhouse to explode, a last-ditch effort to protect anyone else who might come this way. He hides a dirt bike, too, just in case he can escape during one of those fugue states. He's still fighting, even though he knows he's probably going to lose.
It's a desperate attempt to hold on to some semblance of control, some agency, in a situation that's spiraling out of control. He knows what's coming, but he's not giving up without a fight.
And he keeps researching, looking at satellite images, public records, anything he can get his hands on. And he confirms what he suspected. They haven't contained it. Millbrook's just the beginning. He finds evidence of military activity, checkpoints, evacuations, but it's all being covered up, blamed on wildfires or other things. And the movement patterns, the way they're spreading, it's organized. It's like they're learning, adapting to everything we try to do to stop them.
A learning, adapting enemy that can think, strategize, and retain knowledge. That's a terrifying prospect, and it makes you wonder how we could possibly fight something like that.
And that brings us to his final warning. He knows he's not got much time left. She says the Lazarus pathogen is out there, it's spreading, and the government's lying about it. He says we can't fight it the way we fight other infections. We can't just kill them, because they were us, and they still retain some of that knowledge, that intelligence. And he warns people to watch out for signs. Military activity, quarantines, people with that gray skin, the black veins. Don't trust anyone, he says, and stay away from Millbrook and the surrounding areas.
A chilling message, for sure. A warning from someone who's seen the enemy, who's becoming the enemy, and who knows that we're not prepared for what's coming.
He ends his account by talking about his deadly mistake, the one that led him to Millbrook. He believes it's only a matter of time before he's fully one of them, and he thinks he's going to be out there hunting others, bringing them into the collective. It's a terrifying thought. Your own body, your own mind turned against you, used as a weapon against others.
And it makes you think about the nature of consciousness, doesn't it? What does it mean to be an individual, to have free will, when something like this can come along and rewrite your very being?
So that's it. That's Martin's story. And it's more than just a scary story. It's a warning. What happened in Millbrook, it's not over. It's just the beginning. And the scariest part, it's not just about some monster, some mindless creature. It's about us. It's about what we're capable of becoming and what we might be facing in the future.
It makes you think about the choices we make, the technologies we develop, the risks we take. Because sometimes the things we create to heal, to improve ourselves, they can have consequences we never imagined. And those consequences, well, they can be terrifying.
So think about it, folks. What if there's something out there, something that's not just a disease, but a whole different way of being, something that's connected, that can think, that can learn? And what if it's already here, spreading, waiting for its chance to evolve?
A chilling thought to leave you with. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, but most importantly, stay vigilant.
Okay, so you're here for the deep dive.
Yeah.
I mean, you really want to go deep.
Absolutely deep.
Not just skim the surface.
Oh, no.
But really, like, get into those aha moments.
Yeah, those aha moments.
With the information, right? So that's what we're going to do.
That's what we're doing today. And,
You found something really, really interesting for us this time.
Yeah, I mean, this one is, this was something else, right? This is not just like a rehash or a summary.
Right.
This is like firsthand stuff.
Yeah, this is an account directly from someone who experienced this stuff.
Exactly. And
yeah, so we're talking about the notes from Dr. Olivia Chen.
okay.
And she was an environmental geologist, and she was investigating these abandoned mines in Indiana.
All right, so right off the bat, we've got, this is not, someone who's, just...
Right, this is not just like some ghost hunter going out there.
Yeah, this is someone who's grounded in science.
Right.
This is a scientist through and through.
Yeah, her expertise is in geology and like the environment. And that makes her findings so much more impactful in this case.
Yeah, I mean, like if it were anyone else, you know, you might think, oh, they're seeing things, but...
They're imagining stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
This is someone who knows what they're looking at.
Yeah, and that's what makes this so interesting.
Totally. And, especially considering, like, what had happened to her before this whole thing.
Right.
Like, she'd kind of been discredited professionally.
Yeah, she blew the whistle on some environmental issues, and there were some repercussions.
Yeah, exactly. Like, she paid the price for speaking out.
Yeah. So, when she gets this anonymous email
Okay.
with data from these mines in Duggar, Indiana,
All right, Duggar, Indiana.
it's more than just scientific curiosity for her.
Right. She's got to be thinking, like, is this my chance to prove them wrong?
Yeah, maybe this is the way I can, vindicate myself.
Exactly.
And the data is hinting at something beyond, just the normal pollution.
Okay, so what do we have here?
Yeah, it's not just heavy metals. It's like unusual radiation and chemicals that don't really match up with what you would typically find in a mine.
So something weird is going on.
Yeah, and then there's disturbing photos of mutated animals attached to the email.
Oh, wow. So right away, it's like, this is not your average environmental case.
Exactly.
So what does she do?
She grabs her mobile lab, which is this Coachman Nova RV,
Okay.
and heads out towards Sullivan County, Indiana.
All right, so she's on the case.
Yeah, and almost immediately, even before she gets to the mines,
Or,
her equipment is picking up elevated contamination.
oh, wow. So it's not just right at the mine.
No.
It's spreading.
Yeah, and it's beyond what you would typically expect from acid mine drainage.
So it's whatever this is, it's potent. It's seeping out.
Yeah. And then she starts talking to some locals.
Oh, boy. That's always interesting.
Right. And, they're pretty hushed about it, but they mention these Crawford tunnels.
Crawford Tunnel.
Yeah, and some government takeover decades ago.
Oh, so some kind of cover-up?
Maybe, and then they talk about how the place was sealed up after some accident.
Okay, so there's definitely a story here.
Yeah, some secret history buried under the surface.
And it makes me wonder, what else could be hidden there?
Exactly. So anyway, she finally gets to this secluded lake with multiple mine entrances around it.
Okay.
And the atmosphere feels totally wrong.
Creepy wrong.
Yeah, weirdly silent.
Huh.
There's no wildlife.
That's not a good sign.
No, and there's this constant low hum
Coming from where?
from the ground.
Oh, wow. So just this unsettling vibe.
Totally.
So what about her initial readings?
Well, her sensors are showing elevated radiation, which isn't too surprising for an old mine.
Right, but there's got to be something more to it.
Yeah, she notes that it has unusual spectral characteristics.
What does that mean?
Well, it's the radiation has a unique fingerprint,
Okay.
and it doesn't match the typical profile of radioactive decay.
So it's not
Right, and then the water samples show these tiny particles glowing under UV light,
Okay, interesting.
but they're not just randomly scattered.
Oh, so what are they doing?
They're forming patterns.
So some kind of organization?
Yeah, something is actively structuring them.
That's a creepy.
As night falls, things get even weirder.
Oh, no.
There's a faint glow coming from the lake near some submerged mine entrances.
Oof, that's not good.
And then she finds these animal tracks.
Okay, but not just any tracks, right?
Right, these aren't just deformed. They're anatomically wrong.
What do you mean?
Extra limbs.
Creatures from another planet.
Yeah, it's something that doesn't match any known species.
So the environment is actually changing the animals.
Yeah, it's not just polluted, it's actively reshaping life.
So then what happens?
Well, her motion-activated cameras start picking up multiple heat signatures,
Right.
moving around her RV all night long.
But they're gone by morning.
Exactly.
So something is definitely watching her.
Yeah, and it seems like they're moving with a purpose.
They're intelligent.
Right, so let's talk about this first contact a little more.
Okay, yeah. Those heat signatures circling the RV all night and then gone by daybreak.
Exactly, and then the next morning,
Yeah.
she finds these distorted humanoid tracks.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, and they're forming a perfect circle.
A perfect circle.
Yeah, right around her vehicle.
That's not random.
No, it's way too deliberate.
It's they're marking their territory.
Yeah, or maybe even a ritual or something.
It's they're communicating with her in a way.
Right.
It's pretty unsettling.
And then she goes to investigate that sealed mine entrance.
All right.
The radiation readings are even higher.
Oh, boy.
The concentration of those unknown chemicals is stronger, and there's this overpowering metallic scent.
Mm-hmm. So it's the source is close.
Yeah, and the humming is even more intense now.
You can practically feel it.
Yeah, and then she finds something that changes everything.
What is it?
A degraded military ID badge.
Okay, so the military's involved somehow.
Yeah, it says Project Rebirth Crawford Special Research Section.
Project Rebirth.
Yeah, so now we're not just talking about mining contamination.
Right. This is something much bigger.
Yeah, it looks like we're dealing with a Cold War secret.
A hidden chapter of government experimentation.
Exactly.
And this fleeting shadow she sees in the tunnel.
Yeah, even though she tries to dismiss it.
She knows someone's watching her.
Right. And then there's that strange black substance she collects.
The one with the amber crystals?
Yeah, it looks like it's pulsing.
Oh, wow. So that's not something you see every day?
No, it's really bizarre.
Like something out of a sci-fi movie?
Yeah, so back at the RV, she starts analyzing everything.
All right, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, so this black substance, it's defying everything she knows about science.
How so?
It's got organic compounds and radioactive elements mixed together.
But that shouldn't be possible.
Right, it should be unstable, but somehow it's holding together.
So something is keeping it stable.
Yeah, and then she looks at it under a microscope. And she sees these structures that look like human cells.
Human cells?
Yeah, but they've been altered.
Altered? How?
They're resistant to radiation.
Why?
And they're undergoing abnormal cell division.
That's not good.
No, it suggests some kind of deliberate manipulation of biological processes.
Like they were trying to create something.
Exactly.
Some things that could survive radiation.
And then the military badge under UV light.
Yeah.
It confirms the date, 1962.
Okay.
There's this unidentified warning symbol.
I wonder what that means.
And the security classification is way beyond top secret.
So this was something they really wanted to keep hidden.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And then the air samples,
Oh, yeah.
they confirm the worst.
Yeah, they show trace amounts of these Cold War era chemicals.
The ones they used in human experiments.
Right.
Specifically for radiation resistance and tissue preservation.
Exactly. So it's pretty clear that the military was doing some classified research down there
Yeah, research involving modifying human biology.
to withstand extreme conditions.
This is like straight out of a nightmare.
It really is.
It's like something out of those, Cold War horror stories.
Absolutely.
The ones where they're trying to create super soldiers?
Yeah.
This poor woman, she stumbles right into this.
Yeah, she's way over her head.
So what happens next?
Well, the camera footage gets really disturbing.
Oh, so.
It shows these bipedal figures,
Okay.
but their proportions are all wrong.
Oh, wow.
And their movements are jerky and unnatural.
That's creepy.
And there's this yellowish glow coming from them.
It's not good.
And then there's one frame
Yeah.
where one of the figures is just staring straight at the camera with these glowing eyes
Yeah.
and this wide, fixed grin.
That's terrifying.
It's like something out of a nightmare.
Yeah, like the stuff of nightmares.
And right after that, the perimeter alarm goes off.
Oh, no. They're coming for her.
Yeah. Multiple heat signatures are approaching the RV. Fast. And they're coming from the mine entrance.
So they're not just watching her anymore?
Right. They're actively coming after her.
So what do they look like up close?
Well, she describes them as grotesquely preserved yet partially decayed.
So like zombies.
Kinda, but worse.
Worse.
Yeah, their skin is hardened and blackened, and they're wearing remnants of old clothing.
Like what kind of clothing?
Work coveralls, lab coats, military uniform.
Oh, wow. So these are the people who work down there.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And their eyes.
Glowing yellowish.
Ugh, and there's black fluid seeping from their bodies.
It's like they're both alive and dead at the same time.
That's really disturbing.
Yeah, and they surround the RV.
With like military precision.
Yeah, it's clear that they're not just a mindless mob.
Right, they're working together.
And then one of them, a transformed military officer,
Oh, wow.
he presses his hand against the window.
Leaving that residue.
Yeah, that pulsating residue. And he mouths the words, "We need you. We need your knowledge."
You can still talk.
Well, not really talk, but he can communicate.
Right, so they're not completely mindless.
No, they still have some level of cognitive function.
But they need her expertise.
Yeah, it's like they're desperate.
It's a pretty chilling thought.
And when she analyzes that residue,
Yeah.
it shows altered human DNA.
Altered how?
It's like a hybrid biological material.
So it's not entirely human.
Right, and it exhibits cellular activity but without any normal metabolism.
So they're like living dead.
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
So then she starts looking into Project Rebirth.
Right, she finds some declassified fragments, and it paints a pretty grim picture.
What does it say?
Well, it talks about Cold War experiments
Okay.
focused on human radiation resistance.
So they were trying to create people who could survive a nuclear attack
That's what it looks like.
in this Crawford site.
Yeah, that's where they were doing phase 3 trials.
Until what happened?
There was a containment incident in 1964.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And according to the official records, 37 research personnel and an unspecified number of volunteer subjects were lost.
Lost.
Yeah, no bodies were ever recovered.
So they just vanished.
And the whole operation was classified as environmental remediation.
Oh, of course they covered it up.
Yep.
Classic government secrecy.
So then Dr. Chen decides to investigate a second mine entrance.
This one was intentionally collapsed, right?
Right. And the humming there is even stronger,
Oh, wow.
and it's pulsing.
Like a heartbeat.
Yeah, like a slow, monstrous heartbeat.
Ugh, that's creepy.
As she descends into the tunnel, she finds concrete reinforcements.
They were trying to keep something in.
Yeah. And she also finds metal doors that have been torn outward.
So whatever was inside was strong.
Incredibly
Like it wanted to get out.
And then she discovers a subterranean laboratory.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, it's got rusted radiation testing equipment, chemical workstations, medical tables with restraints, observation windows. Most of them shattered.
It sounds like a scene from a horror movie.
It really is.
And that black substance.
Everywhere.
Still pulsing. Yeah, pulsing rhythmically.
Ugh.
Like the heart of this whole thing.
And then there are documents scattered everywhere.
What kind of documents?
Lab notes, subject records, photos of the transformation.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's really disturbing.
The photos show what?
The stages of the transformation.
Like the hardening of the skin and the glowing eye?
Yeah, and the mutations.
So these researchers, they were documenting everything.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to understand what they had created.
But they lost control.
Completely. And the notes, they describe the abilities that the subjects developed.
Like what?
Enhanced strength, incredible radiation resistance, and this disturbing collective consciousness.
So they weren't just individuals anymore.
Right, they were connected somehow.
Like a hive mind.
Yeah. And then she finds a final log entry.
What does it say?
Containment breach in Sector 7. Subjects exhibiting coordinated resistance, emergency protocols enacted. God forgive us for what we've created here.
They knew they screwed up.
Big time.
But in all the chaos, she misses something important.
What's that?
The black substance, it starts pulsing faster. Like it's sensing her presence.
And then it happens.
What?
Direct contact.
Oh, no.
Yeah, a tendril of that black substance reaches through a tear in her suit and touches her arm.
And she gets infected.
Yeah, and it's not just a physical thing.
What do you mean?
She experiences this overwhelming neural shock.
Like she's being overloaded.
Yeah, alien memories are flooding her mind.
Oh, wow. So it's messing with her mind, too.
Yeah, she's seeing flashes of underground tests, hearing the screams of other subjects, feeling this intense collective hunger.
It's like she's being absorbed into the hive mind.
Yeah, she manages to tear herself away,
But-
but a piece of that substance remains stuck to her arm.
So the infection is still spreading.
And then the transformed figures, they emerge from the shadows.
Oh, no. They're coming for her.
Yeah, they block her escape routes and they're communicating with each other.
Using those gestures and hums.
Right.
She's trapped.
She manages to activate a flare.
Does that work?
It gives her a moment.
What do you mean?
The light from the flare makes them recoil.
So they're sensitive to light.
Yeah, but it's only temporary.
Oh, no.
They start pursuing her through the tunnels,
Still coordinated.
perfectly coordinated.
Like a pack of wolves.
And they're using clicks and hums to communicate with each other.
Like some kind of alien language.
She finally breaks out into the daylight.
But they're still after her.
They don't stop. Their blackened skin is smoking in the sunlight, but they keep coming.
It's like they're driven by something.
And she can see them clearly now.
What do they look like?
Preserved, but decayed, wearing those remnants of their former lives.
Still in those work clothes and lab coats?
Yeah, and their glowing eyes are fixed on her.
Ugh, it's like they're not even human anymore.
And they're flanking her.
Cutting off her escape.
Yeah, and then she notices it.
What?
The contamination is spreading on her arm.
Oh, no.
Her skin is darkening. There are veins pulsing with an amber light.
It's the same as them.
Exactly.
And she's experiencing those jolts of pain.
And flashes of alien perception.
So the infection is taking hold.
Yeah, and it's accelerating.
This is bad.
She spends hours running through the forest.
Trying to escape.
But they're relentless.
They're learning her moves.
And they're adapting their strategies.
See, like they're getting smarter.
And then she runs into two of them. Two of the transformed humans.
Oh, no.
But these ones are different.
How so?
They're wearing lab coats, and their name badges are still legible.
They were researchers?
Yeah, Dr. Morgan and Dr. Weiss.
And they can still talk.
Well, kind of. They say, we need your expertise. The degradation is accelerating. The original formula is failing.
So they're aware of what's happening to them.
Yeah, and they're desperate.
They need her help.
And Dr. Weiss, he holds out this weathered journal.
What's in it?
Chemical formulas.
It's their research.
Yeah, he says, the government abandoned us. We found a way to survive, to adapt, but the adaptation is becoming unstable. The younger generations degrade faster, lose more cognitive function.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, they're trapped in this nightmare.
And they're trying to fix it.
And then she sees them. The younger generation.
Oh, no.
Smaller, more degraded, less human looking.
It's like they're evolving in reverse.
Yeah, it's a glimpse into their future.
A terrifying future.
And then suddenly she's attacked.
By who?
Two of the transformed miners.
Oh, no.
She feels this jolt of alien perception.
The hive mind.
Yeah, and she tries to fire her pistol at them.
Nothing
happens.
They're immune.
Yeah. And then Dr. Morgan, he tells her that the transformation has already begun.
Oh, no.
He gives her a choice.
What kind of choice?
Join them willingly and help them stabilize the formula.
So she can retain her cognitive function.
Right, or resist and become like the third generation.
Mindless and degraded.
It's a horrible ultimatum.
And she can feel the pull of the collective consciousness.
It's getting stronger.
She's losing herself.
But then the RV's UV defense system activates.
What does that do?
It emits a pulse of UV light,
Ugh.
and the transformed humans, they recoil from it.
It hurts them.
Yeah, it gives her a chance to escape.
And she takes it.
Yeah, she jumps into the RV and takes off.
What about the researchers?
Dr. Morgan yells after her, "It will call you back. The collective needs your knowledge. The transformation cannot be stopped. Once begun, only guided."
So it's a hopeless situation.
She drives recklessly to Colorado.
Avoiding all contact.
Yeah, she knows she's carrying a contagion.
And the transformation is progressing.
Yeah, her skin is darkening. The amber glow is intensifying. She's dissociating from her own thoughts, and the pull to return to Duggar is overwhelming.
So what does she do?
She quarantines herself in her home laboratory.
She's got to try to stop it.
Yeah, she sets up automated incineration protocols,
In case she loses control.
and she spends the next 4 months studying the infection.
Trying to find a cure.
But her periods of independent consciousness are getting shorter and shorter.
The hive mind is taking over.
And then she realizes something.
Yeah.
The government is watching her.
They know.
Yeah, she sees satellite imagery of her property, and there are unexplained land acquisitions around the mine sites.
They're trying to contain it.
But they're not telling anyone.
They're just burying it.
And her research leads her to another disturbing discovery.
What's that?
Similar incidents have happened at other Cold War research facilities.
So this isn't just an isolated case.
No, it seems like there were multiple projects going on.
All focused on human augmentation.
And they're all experiencing containment failures.
Oh, it's worse.
It looks like there's been cross-contamination.
Between the different projects.
Yeah, so we're not just talking about one type of transformed human
There could be multiple variations.
with different abilities.
Some focused on cognitive preservation,
Others on enhanced mobility.
and some on accelerated decomposition.
It's a nightmare scenario.
So what about Dr. Chen?
Her transformation reaches 40%.
40%.
Yeah, her tissue is hardening, her core temperature is dropping, her metabolism is slowing down.
In her mind.
The periods of independent thought are fleeting.
The hive mind is almost completely in control.
And the pull to return to Duggar.
It's irresistible.
She knows she's running out of time.
So what does she do?
She documents everything.
Everything?
She creates these secure data packages and sends them to her colleagues.
She's trying to warn them.
Yeah, she wants the truth to get out, even if she doesn't survive.
What a hero.
And then she starts working on her final warning.
But she can barely function.
She's using automated software to write it because her motor control is deteriorating and the collective consciousness is constantly intruding.
It's like she's writing from beyond the grave.
And her individual consciousness is fading.
The hive mind is taking over.
She's becoming something else.
Something alien.
And she's starting to see things from a different perspective.
The perspective of the collective.
Yeah, she understands the value of spreading and preserving knowledge.
But not in the way we understand it.
Right.
It's a terrifying transformation.
And then she finishes her warning.
What does it say?
Stay away from the abandoned mines near Duggar, Indiana. Do not investigate any unusual readings. Do not collect any samples. Do not dismiss these warnings. Contamination spreads through direct contact. The transformation, once begun, is irreversible. And if you encounter anyone with blackened skin and amber luminescent eyes, run.
A final message from the edge of oblivion. So there you have it.
What a story.
Dr. Chen's terrifying discovery.
A horrifying consequence of secret, unethical science.
Lurking beneath the surface.
This has been a really unsettling deep dive.
It's definitely given us a lot to think about.
Yeah, I mean, what are the ethical implications of all this?
Right.
What responsibility do we have for the actions of those who came before us?
And what other secrets are out there waiting to be uncovered?
It's a sobering thought.
It makes you wonder what else is hidden in the forgotten places of our world.
Some things are better left buried.
Stay safe out there.
And stay informed.
Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're diving into a situation, well, you could say it's a bit out there.
Yeah, definitely bizarre.
It's all documented by this guy, Dr. Nathan Blackwood.
And he's no ordinary guy.
Right, he's an agricultural pathologist, so he knows his plants.
Exactly, an expert in plant diseases.
Which makes what he found even weirder. Right?
Yeah, you could say that.
We've got, excerpts from his notes, a whole chronicle of, well, it's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, the material you've shared, it paints a pretty unsettling picture, to say the least.
So Dr. Blackwood, this respected expert, starts hearing these stories coming out of central Indiana.
From farmers.
Yeah, farmers describing their corn, doing some crazy stuff.
Like what?
Unusual growth, weird colors, and get this, movement.
Movement, like beyond just wind.
Yeah, actual movement. Can you believe that?
That's definitely not normal.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
For a plant pathologist, these reports would have been really intriguing.
Totally. I mean, any sign of a new disease or something, it's a big deal.
Right, huge implications for agriculture.
So Blackwood, he doesn't just ignore it. He takes a sabbatical, gets his RV all decked out like a mobile lab.
A mobile lab.
Yeah, picture this high-tech lab rolling through cornfield.
That's a great visual.
Talk about a contrast, right?
Absolutely.
He heads straight for Elwood, Indiana, where all the weirdness is centered.
The epicenter of the mystery.
Exactly.
It really shows his dedication, to drop everything and go investigate these reports.
For sure. I mean, it shows how seriously he took this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so picture this.
Yeah.
Blackwood arrives in rural Indiana, and the vibe is just off.
Off in what way?
Well, there are these huge cornfields, but nobody's harvesting.
That's strange for harvest season.
Yeah, and then he stops at a gas station in Anderson.
Okay.
The attendant practically begs him to stay away from Elwood.
Whoa, why?
Says the farmers there are suspicious of outsiders, like they're hiding something.
That's a bit creepy.
Totally. And it just gets weirder when he reaches the campground.
The campground?
Yeah, where he's going to set up his lab. The place is deserted, except for this, really creepy host.
No.
Yeah, this Mr. Carver guy. He got this gray-green skin, and there are these, plant filaments growing in it.
Plant filaments.
Yeah, and his eyes are all cloudy, like they're covered in something.
This is getting stranger by the minute.
And then Carver gives him this warning about the plants being active at night.
Active? What does that even mean?
Right. It's all very cryptic and unsettling.
Like something out of a horror movie.
Exactly. So that night, Blackwood's in his RV, doors locked, windows closed.
I don't blame him.
But then he starts seeing these weird movements in the cornfields.
Movements? Like how?
Subtle but coordinated. Like something's moving through the kern, and it's all directed at his RV.
Directed at the RV. That's freaky.
And then he hears scratching sounds against the trailer walls.
Ugh, no thanks.
Yeah, imagine how creepy that would be.
Not a good first night.
So the next day, despite all this, he heads into the fields.
Grave guy.
He's a scientist, right?
Yeah.
Curiosity and all that.
True.
He finds this massive field north of Elwood with corn that's 12 feet tall.
12 feet? That's enormous.
Yeah, super dense. And this really vibrant, almost unnatural green.
Unnatural how?
It's hard to explain, but it just didn't look right.
I see.
Plus, there's this abandoned farmhouse nearby, adding to the whole creepy vibe.
Yeah, definitely adds to the atmosphere.
When he walks into the field, it's like entering another world. The sunlight's blocked by the tall corn stalks. There are these eerie green shadows everywhere.
And what about the smell?
Oh, the smell. It's sweet but cloying with this chemical undertone that makes his sinuses burn.
Sounds awful.
It was like something was off chemically.
Did he collect any samples?
Yeah, he got some socks, and the sap that came out was weird too.
Weird how?
Thick, greenish white, sticky, and it dried into these crystals. Not your normal corn sap.
That's very unusual.
And get this. When he took samples, the corn stalks around him bent away like they were avoiding him.
Avoiding him?
Yeah, and then they closed in again after he moved on.
That's not normal plant behavior.
Nope. It's like they were reacting to him intelligently.
Creepy.
Back at his mobile lab, he gets to work on the samples.
What did he find?
Well, under the microscope, things got really interesting.
Interesting bad, I'm guessing.
You could say that.
Yeah.
He found these hybrid cellular structures, corn genetics mixed with this weird fungal organism.
A fungus.
Yeah, similar to Ophiocordyceps.
Ophiocordyceps. The ant-controlling fungus.
The one and only.
Oh, that's not good.
No, not at all. It's like the corn was infected with a mind-controlling parasite.
That raises so many questions.
It gets worse. He also observed these spores, but they weren't just floating around randomly.
What were they doing?
They were moving purposefully towards heat and light.
Like they had a sense of direction.
Yeah, like they were seeking something out.
That's incredibly unusual for spores.
And then he made a big mistake.
What happened?
In all the excitement, he was working with the samples open, and he inhaled some of the spores.
Oh.
Yeah, not good.
So what did he do next?
He decided to go into Elwood, try to get some answers from the locals.
Bold move, considering the warnings.
He was desperate for information.
Did he find anything?
The town was super quiet, almost deserted. It was harvest season, but there was no activity.
Like a ghost town.
Yeah, it was really eerie. He went to this diner, the harvest table, and everyone inside just stared at him.
Staring.
Yeah, and they all had this greenish tint to their skin, stiff movements, cloudy eyes.
Just like Mr. Carver.
Exactly. And then he noticed that some of them had these green shoots growing out of their skin.
Green shoots growing out of their
It
skin.
was horrifying, like something out of a nightmare.
It sounds like the infection was spreading and not just to plants.
The waitress came over, and he asked her about the corn, and she said, "The new crop is a blessing. Grows better, faster. Feeds us in ways the old corn never could."
Feeds them.
Yeah, she even mentioned a special recipe they were having that night.
Oh, that's so disturbing.
Thankfully, Blackwood didn't stick around for dinner. As he was leaving, this older man, Frank Tiller, stopped him.
Frank Tiller.
Yeah, he seemed less affected, though he still had those green filaments in his skin.
What did he say?
Frank told him about this Agrinova conglomerate that bought up a bunch of farms a few years back.
Agrinova.
Yeah, they introduced this new hybrid corn, and that's when things started going wrong.
So the new corn is the source of the infection.
It seems so. Frank said the field workers started changing first, then everyone else.
It spread quickly.
Way too quickly. And Frank mentioned these rumors about Agrinova's research facility.
What kind of rumors?
Talk of genetic manipulation, a symbiotic fungus to enhance the corn, things like that.
Sounds like they were playing God with nature.
And it backfired, big time. Frank finally laid it all out. The fungus jumped species, infected the workers, and then spread through the town.
So the infected people are protecting the corn.
Yeah, it's like they're slaves to this fungus, controlled by it.
That explains their behavior.
Frank even told him about his own grandson attacking him when he tried to destroy an infected field.
That's heartbreaking.
And then he gave Blackwood the warning signs of
The
infection.
warning signs?
Yeah, sensitivity to sunlight, unusual thirst, joint stiffness.
Sounds familiar.
Blackwood was already experiencing those symptoms.
You're getting infected.
As he left the diner, he could feel everyone watching him, like they were all connected, observing him.
That's a chilling thought.
Back at the campground, the symptoms got worse. Intense thirst, sensitivity to light, this urge to be near moonlight.
He tried to brush it off as stress, right?
Yeah, at first, but then things escalated.
What happened?
That night, he saw dozens of these glowing figures moving through the corn, surrounding his RV.
Glowing figures.
Yeah, with tendrils coming out of them like they were part plant, part human.
This is getting more and more disturbing.
He decided he had to see Agrinova's facility for himself.
What did he find?
A pretty standard-looking research facility, but then he saw these refrigerated trucks leaving,
Refrigerated trucks.
filled with containers labeled biohazard.
Not your typical corn research.
And then he realized he was being watched. Agrinova's security vehicle showed up.
They knew he was there.
They were onto him. He had to get out of there.
What did he do?
There was a chase, a desperate escape.
Did he make it?
He was driving like a madman, and during the chase, he started changing.
Changing how?
His peripheral vision got super clear, but his central vision was blurry. His joints were stiffening up, and the urge to go back to the cornfields was overwhelming.
The infection was taking over.
He caught a glimpse of his reflection, and his eyes had this green tint to them.
He was becoming one of them.
They set up a roadblock, Agrinova vehicles, and these infected people with green filaments connected them to the corn.
It's like they were all part of one giant organism.
This guy, Dr. Edwards, Agrinova's chief botanist, he stepped out. He was even more transformed, but he could still talk.
What did he say?
He said it wasn't a pathogen. It was the next evolutionary step in agricultural symbiosis, transcendence to something greater.
Typical corporate BS trying to spin a disaster as progress.
Blackwood managed to escape, driving his RV right through a ditch and into the cornfield.
Into the cornfield.
Yeah, he had to. And he said he could feel the plants being crushed like he felt their pain.
The infection was messing with his mind.
He abandoned the RV, stole a pickup truck, and just kept driving.
Did he get away?
The urge to go back to Elwood was so strong he kept blacking out and finding himself heading back south.
The fungus was controlling him.
He finally made it to Interstate 69 and crossed into Michigan, but the transformation was getting worse.
So what happened to him?
He holed up in the Colorado mountains, trying to fight the infection, but it was too late.
It's a tragic story.
He wrote everything down in his notes, everything he learned.
What did he discover?
Agronova engineered this whole thing. They created this modified Ophiocordyceps fungus to act as a neural network, connecting the corn plants.
Like a hive mind for plants.
And it could extend into human brains through the spores.
So that's how it controls people.
It's not just control, it's absorption. The fungus absorbs consciousness, turning people into part of this collective organism.
That's terrifying.
He said they designed it that way, to be compatible with human brains. It wasn't an accident.
It was a deliberate act.
The true harvest, as he called it, wasn't just corn, it was human consciousness.
They were farming people.
You get infected by eating the corn, touching it, or breathing in the spores.
So there's no way to avoid it.
Not easily. And Blackwood thought Agronova had infiltrated government agencies, so there was no help coming.
He was on his own.
He was isolated, transforming, and he knew he couldn't stop it.
Did he give up?
He set up this system to automatically send out his notes if he died, a dead man switch.
He wanted the truth to get out.
He said the organism was resistant to treatments, it was adapting, learning.
It was evolving.
He warned people to avoid Madison County, never eat Agronova corn, report any symptoms to the CDC.
But who's going to listen?
He knew it was a long shot, but he had to try.
What about him? What happened to him?
He kept writing until he couldn't anymore. His last entries are chilling. He talks about feeling his consciousness merging with the network, losing himself.
Using his identity.
He said the only thing that could kill the fungus was fire.
Fire.
Yeah, burning it was the only way. His last words were a warning. Never go to Madison County. Never investigate strange crops. And if you see those green filaments, end it quickly.
He knew what was coming.
It's a horrifying story, but it's a warning.
A warning about what?
The dangers of unchecked science, the potential for unintended consequences, the fragility of our own consciousness.
It makes you think, what else is out there that we don't know about?
What other threats are lurking in the shadows?
It's a question we should all be asking.
And a reminder to be careful, very careful, about what we create and what we consume.
Because sometimes the harvest isn't what we expect.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Until next time.